So what we're building out there, just in case you didn't catch on, I've got the motorcycle that's been sitting outside since I moved out here. Not the end of the world, but the sun here is super intense. We're at 4,000 feet, and we're on about the southern part of the U.S., right along the Mexican border in Texas. So we're getting a lot more UV than normal. At least if you'd wear it out, but it's just sitting there fading. All the plastics and stuff are getting tore up. I thought about putting it in the little shop I built, but that takes up a lot of room. Okay, and then now I've got Turtle half built, 3/4 built. That is in the shop. I mean, it's made out of rusty metal, so that's not a big deal anyway. It could sit outside, but eventually I'll get the battery pack on there. It'll have, new tires, so you don't want to have it all dry rotted. Okay, this is behind the house on the west side. The big box is the 1,500-gallon water tank. And the bottom part, that open-sided box, used to be the bottom of the camper shell when I turned it into a tiny house. I'm going to reuse that. This pile of dirt is left over from the garden. And it's a mix of garden soil and some local dirt that I kind of mixed together, and then I put the boxes in the back of the bus to keep them out of the weather when, over winter. So I thought, well, I got to move this pile of dirt anyway, why not just put it back into a couple boxes? So originally when I had the boxes, there was gravel on the bottom and then this mix of dirt on top. Since I'm just trying to put the dirt somewhere, I thought, let me just put just the dirt by itself into the boxes. Okay, we'll make it look nice and neat and get the rocks out of here. There were 4 or 5 things that grew fairly good last year and a bunch that didn't, so I'm just going to grow a couple lines of what actually did grow. Carrots, radishes, onions, and lettuce mostly. And here we got a rabbit hole. I'm going to have to close that in. I'm trying to keep the snakes out of here. I made this box to match the size of the truck because the camper shell used to sit on the truck, so I just made a new box and put the camper shell on top of it. There was a video about that a couple of years ago. I slept in that for one winter. Alright, step 1, get rid of the bushes. See all the wind blowing up. It was just crazy windy that day. Wind really bothers me, but I find if I wear my Bluetooth headphones, I don't notice the wind as much, and then I can get some work done. So I'm out here jamming out some music, and it's less awful. Definitely earned my shower that day, though. I've got various piles of dead bushes all over. A little bit of zen raking. Seems kind of silly, but I find when I'm working out there, if I do take the time to rake the ground level and flat, after a while it blends it back into the original dirt and you don't notice it so much. I ended up saving all the screws from here. That's what that coffee can is for. Some of the screws you just could not get out. A lot of the screws I've used on here were used 2 or 3 times, or they'd get rusty and you couldn't get the bit to grab in them. But I do got to say that the Torx 25 bit does work pretty good. Also, the framing hammer is pretty effective. At this point, whatever it takes to get it done, I was trying not to spend 4 hours doing demolition just to use the wood. Alright, let's see what's underneath. This is the kind of project I'm really trying to do now in March before the snakes really wake up. So, I haven't seen any snakes yet this year, but they're coming. Okay, it looks safe. I did find some pretty interesting looking black spiders underneath, great big ones. This box has been moved so many times that it's just about falling apart, so sometimes it's easier just to break it. I was able to reuse almost all of the parts from here, though. I hadn't planned on that. I was thinking, well, I'll get some of the studs, and then I do have some leftover OSB, but for this project, it didn't really seem like it was worth using new wood. So part of the garden last year actually used this box, and so there was so much dirt down in the screws. These were just about impossible. Plus, I watered it, and so they were all rusty and pretty hard to get them out. Some of them, after I broke it apart, I'd go back with vice grips and turn them out by hand. And yeah, it's hard to see the screws in all the dirt, so just go ahead and sweep them off so you can find where they are. That part just broke right off there. Obviously, sweeping in the desert doesn't otherwise make sense, but there was a purpose to it. And get a quick drink. Man, listen to that wind, though. It was just howling that day. No clouds, though, yet. All right, I always start off with kind of an idea and a plan. I would think my contribution to technology, no, that doesn't sound right. Most of what I have done out here has involved the post hole digger and just planting 2x4s into the ground and then dump the sand back in, pack them down a little bit. That has worked really well. I don't typically use any concrete in something like this. I just dig a hole, and then I figure out it's in the wrong spot, so I move the hole. And of course, we got our favorite one-handed DeWalt clamps. If they ever sponsored me, that would be cool, but so far, nothing yet. But I use these clamps all the time out here. They are the best things ever. All right, this is the bottom from that box, and we're going to use that for the south-facing wall. Throw the clamp on real quick. I've already moved this hole once, so we'll try it again. This works, this is one of those things that works out pretty good. Go ahead and clamp the wood together so you know it's in the right place, then fill the hole in and eyeball it. These batteries are getting pretty old on my little Bosch 12-volt drills. These are lithium batteries. They work really good, but I got to remember that I bought these before I came out here. So the tools were used, and then I bought new batteries and new chargers for them. Okay, one of the problems here is I did this on purpose in a way. I used a full sheet of OSB on the top of that box, and then I was planning on just berming the bottom. That's why it's so high. But I realized after a while that it was taking way too much dirt and everything was digging in there. So I put a 1-foot strip of OSB on across the bottom. And then what I'm doing now is I took out the sand and I put in gravel with bigger rocks. Just from local here, I just walk around the property and I find the right size of rock for that day. But I've heard that the animals have a harder time digging if there's rocks in the dirt. So I just scooped up a bunch of rocks and dumped them in there. Look at how much that wind is blowing. All right, let's take a break. So I was kind of being funny here, but you get down behind that windbreak there, and the wind just dropped off to nothing in that corner. But couldn't get nothing done if I stayed there. So this is what it looks like at the end of the first day. I only worked until about 2 o'clock that day, so this is about 4 hours worth of work. But the wind, it was just really annoying, so I'm like, that's it, I'm done. March 11, a few minutes after 6 in the morning. This is sunrise of day 2, March 11th. Looks pretty nice. You only get a pretty sunrise if there's clouds or dust in the air. And I sped up the last little bit of it here. Okay, we're going to jump to the east end of the house now. All right, it's a new day. So, earlier I took down this section of windbreak that was here. That's also been kind of my reference because that was one of the first things I built that was originally part of the shower. Before I moved the bus up to here, there was another spot I parked the bus and I built an outdoor shower, just a windbreak basically. Honestly, painting OSB seemed like a waste. It didn't make the wood last that much longer. That one's rotted off. That bottom was completely rotted. Made it easy. Oh. Normally, just set into the ground. I don't get a lot of rot here. You got a brand new piece of wood. And I've had people ask about pressure treated or anything like that. Honestly, the part that's buried looks better than the part that was exposed. It keeps it out of the sun, and there's so little moisture here, it doesn't really rot the wood. I've seen that a bunch of times when I pull something out. The part underground looks better than the part up above. Strange but true, so I gotta watch out for there's a screw in that one still, so I don't stab myself. Oops, that might be the exception to the rule. That one broke off. Huh. Termites got to that one. It's completely rotted on the bottom. Well, that is so weird. Is the OSB really wasn't touching the ground very much. So even if it rained hard, the water would have drained away from it really quickly. I just realized why that one was rotten. That was from the shower. So it would have got a lot of water on it. More often than when it rained. So that makes sense now. That's why it was so unusual. As is so often the case when you're making it up as you're going, you make some mistakes. The issue is my roofing is 8 feet. The OSB is 8 feet. The roofing is at a slant. You can't make a slant longer than a straight line. These were leftover 2x6s I was going to use for floor joists for the house. So I ended up with about 8 or 10 of them. These were only 8 feet long, and the floor joists I ended up using were 12 feet long. So these were just kind of oddballs. I didn't really know what else to do with them. I had eyeballed putting this up here, and I ended up being a 1/4 inch off in 4 feet, so I only had to move it a little bit. I was pretty happy with myself for getting it that close. There's a lot of jobs I don't even bother with a level or a square, but then I come back and look at it later, and it always bugs me. So I figured, well, let's go ahead and at least try to make it look straight. And okay, after much mucking about, I feel like I've got a starting point here at least. So I got 2x6s running horizontally, and it'll be 2x4 rafters. I put little X's where the rafters are going to be. I realized I had a whole bunch of hangers left over from the house. Here I'm just cutting the top off the rafters, just to cut a little wedge off so they slope down. And I use that saw so seldom that the battery is always dead when I grab it, so I'm going back to the little Bosch recip saw. Like the lithium batteries don't work very good when they're cold, and they also don't work very good when they're hot. I only had to cut 5 of the rafters, and it was going to take 15 minutes to charge the big saw battery, so I was done before the battery was charged. And cut my head off again. Don't worry, it's still there. Okay, the issue will be, if I put this hanger all the way up, because it's made for a 2x6, it's going to be sticking up an inch and hit the roofing. So I'm going to have to put it down, but that still lets me use these holes to help secure it. It's not going to rest on the hanger, but it's better than nothing. So that plus the 2 screws that I got coming from the outside should give me a little more bite. Yeah, I figured I had the hangers, might as well use them. I could kind of use this like a hurricane bracket, right? One this way and one this way to help lock it in. I've got them, I might as well use some. I got a little prong on there, you can use that first to kind of whack it in there. hold itself. These little nails are tricky to hold on to. These are little short nails. Just short enough that they don't come out the other side is the idea. Working so close to the end of the boards, these are old boards, so they're all splitting and kind of rough looking, but I've already gone through the first pretty good windstorm and the roof hasn't blown off yet, so I guess we're okay. Looks pretty rickety here, but by the time it was done, it felt pretty good. This is one of the ones from the shower. This is not the one that broke off. The end was rotten enough that when I was hammering, I knocked the screws right out of the end of it. So we got rid of that one. And I just skipped it for now, and then I looked around later and found another board I could use. That was less awful. This is an 8-foot by 8-foot roof. Trusses are spaced every 24 inches. So, or rafters. So you end up needing 5 2x4s for that. And I used the 2x6s going crosswise just because there wasn't any support in the middle. Okay, now I'm replacing the board that I threw away. All of the OSB used on this project was from that box that I took apart. No sense putting good wood out here. I put these up on top instead of purlins. I'm not sure if that's even the right word. That's just what I've heard. When I put the metal roofing up, I'm going to be able to screw it into the trusses or into the rafters, but this will give me something in between rafters I can put more screws in. Figured slightly better than nothing. It also does make it feel a lot stronger with something to tie the rafters together. So all of the screws used on here were reclaimed from other projects. I do have 40 pounds of screws that are new, but I figured no sense using new ones if I didn't have to. It's a little slower, but I had time this day. This is the metal roofing that I had been storing under the bus, so that's why it looks kind of scabby now. I don't know if I'd want to drink the water off of this roof, but it would be good enough for the garden. Plus, after it rains a couple times, it'll clean that up a lot, so it won't be so bad. That would be the song of my people, I guess. Okay, this will either work or it won't. I'm not sure if it'll run on the inverter. This has got to be one of my favorite tools that doesn't get used very often. In what universe do you have a skill saw actually made for cutting metal? There we go.
close to the line.
I did pretty good at that time, but I have cut through a rock with that saw. It didn't slow it down at all. If I catch any water off of it, it'll go to the garden. But one of the things I'm not doing right half of the time is you're supposed to put the screws on the top of the ridges so that any hole that you make in the roof with the screw doesn't leak. Well, on this one I don't really care, so sometimes I had to put the screws on the bottom of the ridge.
It seems undignified, but it was easier than finding the key. And it's probably out of gas anyway. It would run, but the front tire's flat, and if I start it up, I want to ride it, so.
When I sold the truck, I was tempted to sell the motorcycle at the same time, but I'm still holding out hope that I'll eventually be able to put it back on the road again. Someday. I feel bad every time I see it, though. You shouldn't let it just sit out in the sun and die. It's meant to be ridden.
You get the idea. Yeah, that gives me more than 4 feet on the other side. So when I'm putting turtle in, it'll go over there. Later, not today, depending on what the turning radius ends up being on turtle, I'll probably drive turtle straight in, pick up the front and swing it around and just push it back in. Coming out, I might be able to take these 3 out, and then right there is my trail that goes to the gate. So I'll just do a little clean up here and we'll be set. I am going to put rain gutters on, but not today. Watch, it'll rain today. Yeah, I don't have any more trash cans that I could use to catch any fresh water in. I was considering making it just barely high enough for the back of the motorcycle, so I would have come down almost a foot. And then just coming up even with the top of the box. And I got to thinking about it. I was about halfway into it already, and I'm like, why? Right? It doesn't cost me anymore. I'd end up cutting off my 2x4 anyway. So why not go up as high as we can? And one last detail I want to point out in case somebody else tries to do this. Not calling any attention to the straightness of this, because it's not. I'm going to put a piece of OSB across here, just screw it right to the ends of the rafters, and then hang my rain gutter off of here. I might put a 2x4 across instead to step it out a little bit, because if the rain gutter is too far in, the rain will come shooting right across on a hard rain. If it's a really slow rain, the rain will actually tend to come back sometimes before it drips off, which is weird, but it happens. So you'd want the rain gutter maybe about here. So I was kind of playing with that. On the shop, I just put a piece of OSB here and then screwed the rain gutter to the OSB. So I'm going to hold it up here and see where I want it. I might go with the 2x4 across the end just to have a little more room. And then what I found on the other ones, you want a pretty good slope. You know, don't get cute and try to make it look flat. You want it to slope one direction so the water really runs. Otherwise it just sits there. It's weird, it'll pool up sometimes before it starts running. So give it a good 2 or 3 inches to drop in 8 feet and then it'll run really good. No sense of commitment yet. But I did put my 2 garden boxes here. I had to move the dirt. The dirt was where the motorcycle is, basically. If I just do 2 boxes, then I don't waste as much water. I could still get some carrots and radishes and onions and lettuce. That's the things that grew the fastest. See if I get any rain after that, right? So if I put a little bit of water on there and get a little bit of lettuce, great. Another thought, because of how small that is, I could rig a little plastic tent over just the beds, make a little one-sided greenhouse. Just make a flap on a frame that I can drop down overnight and hope the wind doesn't tear it apart. That's more likely. Anyway, this is good enough for now. I don't feel bad about using the 2x6 here because of the span and because I didn't do any intermediate wall, right? I'm probably going to leave this open. I like that the air can flow in. I like that I can see inside. I got lots of light. As long as I don't think that the wind blowing through is a problem. If I close it in too much, then all the rabbits and mice and everything are going to try to move in there. And then once I get turtle put together, it'll come out here too, and then that'll get out of the shop, and then I have room to walk in the shop. That was the biggest thing. All right, that's it. Pick it all up. Turned out to be a really nice day. It was really cloudy this morning, but I got lots of sun today. It's pretty warm, not too windy. Yesterday, by 2 o'clock, I was done. I just got so tired of the wind blowing. Hopefully it survives the next windstorm. I think it'll be okay. It's early, it's anchored as well as the solar panels. Yeah. Alright, like and share and subscribe and Patreon and all that good stuff. Stay tuned. Man, my eyes feel like they're just full of gravel right now. That wind, oh man. It is 74 degrees inside. The window is open. It's been pretty much in the 70s all day outside. It is just gorgeous. 10th of March. Yeah, right? Gotta love that. I'm so glad I hit record when I did. Let's just not do anything, right? Okay, rice cooker going. Hot water boiler boiling. Gonna make some tea because I'm worth it. And my throat's getting raspy from all the wind and dust and stuff. So what I've been doing lately is, well, I tried 2 days of no coffee, just drink tea in the morning. I fell asleep in my chair about 4 times each day. I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. So I'll drink my 4 cups of coffee in the morning, and then after that I'll switch to tea, and then I actually maybe sleep at that night. Yeah, little tweak. Plus, by the time we get, now, it's not going to get down to freezing anymore, probably. The next 10-day forecast is 35 and above for the lows. So now I don't feel like I need to drink 14 cups of coffee just to, keep warm. So what we're building out there, just in case you didn't catch on, I've got the motorcycle that's been sitting outside since I moved out here. Not the end of the world, but the sun here is super intense. We're at 4,000 feet, and we're on about the southern part of the U.S., right along the Mexican border in Texas. So we're getting a lot more UV than normal. The motorcycle is, 10, 15 years old now, I think. I forget what year it is. It's pretty bad. So it never looked really stellar anyway, but it's getting worse just sitting in the sun. And I'm not riding it. So, at least if you'd wear it out, but it's just sitting there fading. All the plastics and stuff are getting tore up. I thought about putting it in the little shop I built, but that takes up a lot of room. Okay, and then now I've got Turtle half built, 3/4 built. That is in the shop. It's made out of rusty metal, so that's not a big deal anyway. It could sit outside, but eventually I'll get the battery pack on there. It'll have, new tires, so you don't want to have it all dry rotted. I had 3 or 4 ideas I was playing with. One, the camper shell would have been big enough to put Turtle in, but not Turtle plus the motorcycle. If I would have put the camper shell back on top of that box that I took apart, it'd be plenty high. You can walk in there if you stoop down a little bit. It wasn't high enough to stand up in, but it wasn't wide enough for the motorcycle and Turtle. I didn't think I was going to use as much wood as I did from that box bottom that I took apart.
you know, like some of that wood, I just ended up breaking it off. So when I reused it, I just changed the hole pattern. So I just hit good parts of wood. It's good enough. I mean, this is just so that if I put something inside that box, the wind doesn't hit it as much. The sun doesn't shine on it as much. I'm like, okay, I've already used the OSB. That money is spent. I'm not going to put more OSB up for that. And I have seen rabbits coming in and out of there. So I probably don't care if they're in there. But this is the thing this year is all of those little hiding holes will attract the snakes because the snakes can smell the rats and the mice. So if you've got a hole that the snake can get into, that'll give it a place to hide during the day. And that was one of the problems. I had a snake one year. Several times I'd see it around the IBC and then it would duck under the IBC. The IBC was full of water, so it was nice and cool underneath there. Perfect place to be if you're in the, you know, trying to get away from the sun. And then probably mice would have gone down there too. And so, yeah, I just poured rocks along that berm, and that'll keep them from digging into it a little bit more. I do have some leftover wood, but I'm also looking at this as like, it almost isn't worth using new wood for. And I'm not going to paint it, so, you know, why waste, you know, why put new wood out there to turn it into old wood? Just put the old wood out there. It'll be good for a couple of years. And then what I'm looking at is so many things that I'm doing are changing so fast. When I do turtle, this is one of those weird ironies. Turtle is going to be solar powered, but I'm going to park it in a shade shed. Okay. Between the 4 Harbor Freight kits and then Houston Firefox gave me those 4 really big black panels and then the 4 silver panels. I've got more solar panels than I have batteries. On a good day, if I didn't completely kill the batteries the night before, I am pretty much at full charge by 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay. But what that means is I could have, like, I haven't ran the deep freeze all winter because it's cold. You don't need to. And I just don't have any fresh food, really. So when I cook, I eat everything. I don't save leftovers. Open one can, eat it. Okay, so that makes it easy. So I haven't really needed it. Now, when we get into warmer weather, like just on the edge of now and going forward, it would be nice when I grab my water bottle if it wasn't 70 degrees. That's still not too bad. But when it's 100 degrees, it's nice to grab a cold drink. What I need is better batteries, and I'm looking into some options there. So hopefully soon we'll have something like that. Possibly stimulus money. We'll go into that. Anyway, that's kind of a catch-up for now. I just realized I talked for half an hour. 3:30, so I've been in for an hour and a half. Holy shit. I'm glad I came in when I did. This is what a sand blizzard would be like. If you like your air chunky, this was in the forecast actually. It's going to be like 40 mile an hour winds, gusting to 60 or something like that. See the windbreak moving? Yeah. That line of dust there is the access road they so carefully screwed up for us. Yeah.